morning. Thank you for attending this Welcome Chamber of Commerce Breakfast Forum. I'm Wayne Gonzalez, as you know. I'm a commercial lender at First Order Bank and a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors there. This is one of several events that the Chamber is providing to give area business people and community leaders an opportunity to be proactive in developing our regional economy. And real quick, I'm going to put a plug in. On March 28th, we have another of the economic revival meetings in Stewartstown at 6 o'clock. We have Pete Gary's Eggs coming up to do a presentation. They're looking to get some farms opened up to provide them with eggs. And we're in the area, so if you know of anybody you think might be interested, please have them come and contact me with any details. This morning's breakfast forum is sponsored by the Abbott Bank Group, a financial planning firm with offices on Route 3 West Stewartstown. Please pick up their flyers that we've provided for you on the tables. We really appreciate them doing that. And I also want to thank Clay and Michelle for at the Country Club for putting on this breakfast for us this morning. This morning's forum is about the formation of a North Country Economic Development Fund being proposed in state legislation. Senator Jeff Woodburn will provide the background on the initiative, its proposed funding source, and discuss the form and function of the fund. Senator Jeff Woodburn represents New Hampshire's Senate District 1, which includes 58 communities. He has the distinction of representing the largest legislative district in the state that has 27% of the state's land mass. He is currently serving the first term as a state senator and sits on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Senator Woodburn has a long, varied career as successful entrepreneur, award-winning writer and teacher, and child advocate. He served in the State House of Representatives from 1988 to 1990, as an aide to U.S. Congressman Dick Sweat from 1990 to 1994, and as chairman of the State Democratic Party from 1997 to 1999. A love of history led Senator Woodburn to start historic parties, an award-winning specialty real estate firm which he sold in 2005. He has also taught the North Country schools and has written for several newspapers. In 2012, he was honored by the New Hampshire Press Association as the Columnist of the Year. Presently, he writes for the New Hampshire Magazine and serves as the Executive Director of the Council for Children and Adolescents with Chronic Health Conditions. A third-generation resident of Colliers County, Senator Woodburn and his wife live in Dalton with their 2 school-aged children, and they have 3 adult children. Please welcome Senator Woodburn.
And I appreciate it, I wish I had that word economic revitalization as opposed to development. It's just much more, you're on the path, but thank you very much. And varied career means you can't hold a job. But we know what that's like in the North Country, don't we? But thank you. I want to recognize Larry Rappaport, who does a great job for the North Country in Concord, and a really strong voice and a great colleague as well. We have Rick Sampson, our new county commissioner, representing this part of the state. Thank you for your service. And everywhere I go, I see this guy. He needs no introduction in the Colebrook area for sure, but somebody who I'd say we're on the phone every week, just updating each other. And I told me, I'm just a foot soldier for him, and whatever I can do to help him, because Ted Williams, the best hitter in baseball, is only 400, and Vino is just out there all the time trying to get business, and it's hard, and I appreciate all you do. I want to just talk very briefly and principally listen and answer questions, because there's a lot going on in Concord. And one of the pieces of advice that I got the day before I was sworn in, I went to see my old friend, the guy that I ran against 27 years ago in a moment of youthful indiscretion, Harold Burns, who held this seat. And he's now in his late 80s. And I asked him, I said, Harold, what committee did you serve on in the Senate? I said, I need to decide. He said, I can't remember. So when I was put the choice of which committee, and they said you could be this one or over here, but you have to work with days. And the leader said, why don't you just get on one? And my ego was, well, everybody else is on 2 or 3, I'm gonna be on just 1. And she said, well, you know, you've got all that free time to do all these other things. So, it was the wisest advice that I had, because staying focused is the hardest thing. And I think sometimes the strategy is to keep us so busy that we can't possibly stop and focus on anything. So, this has allowed me to do that. And I have my list. I'm a former Ray Burton intern, and I always have my list. On my list, most of them are projects. There's not a lot of ideology here. We want to build the CTE, Career and Technical Education Center, big addition onto the White Mountain Regional High School, where I went to school and where I taught. And it's about over $10 million. We're working very hard to get the women's prison in Berlin on the same site of the men's prison there. Making progress on that. $35 million to build that. Not to mention the jobs, the state jobs that would come to taking care of 100 and some odd female prisoners. The budget, which is directly tied to the gaming, because that's the source of funding, $80 million, license fee, which goes directly into the budget, is important for the North Country. We have some great priorities from economic development, tourism, various topics, mental health, aid for Ray, our selectmen, and others. So, you know, making sure that the state government lives up to its promises and delivers for areas. Because when state government isn't funded, we get hurt disproportionately. Because we use government services. We have a lot of public land, we have a lot of roads, we have a lot of needs in the North Country. So, and then, you know, all of this is very easy. Because the hardest job I have found is getting those damn rest areas open. And I thought this was an easy hanging fruit. I'll make that a priority, and I'll say, if I can get those open, I'll get reelected. But it's, you know, it seems to be the most elusive thing in the world. But, you know, we're not going to let that slide. But I tell you, I have all the respect for John Gauss. He told me the same thing. It's just been a great challenge to try to do that. So, in the North Country, I mean, we're practical. We know how to make tough decisions, and we know a good deal when we see it. And I think this gaming bill is a great deal for the North Country. No matter what your feelings might be, and I don't want to have a debate about gaming pro or con. We want to talk about how do we, if gaming does happen, how do we utilize the money that's sent back to the North Country in the most effective way. But just a little bit about the gaming bill is it is a classic compromise. I came on late to it and have embraced it, that this piece for the North Country had to be included. I know there's some who want the Balsams, and I counted myself as, you know, open in that area, and always said that it's about jobs, it's about the economy, and that's something that I would focus on and be open to. And knowing that was the only source of money we'd ever have this session would be through gaming. So it's a single license at a price tag of $80 million, a high-end $450 million construction requirement. And, you know, with all those dynamics, it's going to be where the people are. It's going to be in southern New Hampshire. Where? I don't know, but very likely to be along the Mass border. Very long ways from here. And in return for that piece, which will, you know, there's all kinds of information, details about how it's taxed, how it's managed, how it's regulated, you know, all those pieces, which I'm not going to get into. But only to say that 10% of the net machine revenue, tax revenue, and they say net, as you pay out the winnings first, and then what's left over, 10% of that will flow back to the North Country for economic development purposes. Last week, after a meeting like this in Littleton, you know, kind of talked about how to kind of put some meat on the bones. And as I'm understanding to be classic Concord form, 15 minutes before we voted on the amendment, we're scratching something on the back of an envelope that brings enough parties together to agree that this is acceptable. But we put that, number one, the North Country is the upper one-third of the state. Didn't want to get hemmed into, you know, is this town in, is this town out? Having greater flexibility, because a project that may not be even in New Hampshire. I used to work at the Gilman Mill in Gilman, and if could ever do something with Vermont to get that going, that would help Whitefield, Dalton, Lancaster, Groveland. I mean, it would be a great economic boom. So we got to be flexible. So that's the upper third. We defined economic development. Fortunately, Wikipedia was available, and we could search it and get a good definition. But job creation, economic stabilization, and I think that's to me that's an important piece of what everything we do is economic stabilization. How can we stabilize our communities, and then improving the standard of living of the residents of the North Country. So that's kind of the definition of economic development. And lastly, created a North Country. I wanted the decision made here in the North Country, and to create a 3-person North Country board appointed by the governor of people for choosing, but outside of the political realm, which I didn't like, but you know, and the idea of getting it outside of politics. So I agreed to that, and you know, and I trust our citizens to be able to direct this and help find the right people to have that broad vision of the North Country. So that's what we have today. Now the House, with people like Larry, will have an opportunity to rewrite this whole thing, change it, define it, do whatever they do. That's their job. They should do it. We're looking forward to those improvements. But that's what we have today. This process is far from over, but I'm fairly certain that we will get a big vote out of the Senate. I'm hearing 18 votes, 18 to 24, 18 out of 24 votes for gaming, sending this bill next week to the House. The governor supports it. The Senate will be on record sending it out next week, and it will be in the House's hands. So we're very close to this occurring. Does not mean it's easy. It's far from easy. But that's where we stand today. And I will stop there because I really am much more interested in what your questions are, your perspectives, and I know Larry is too, to hear what you have to say and how we can serve you better. So with that, I will entertain any questions people might have.
Jeff, how do you control the distribution of that money? Who's going to be the entity that's going to control that? And how would towns apply for that, and what kind of restriction? Maybe too early for how you can use it, but I'm looking as economic development in my town. So how would I come after that money once it's available?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't hit on that. The way the initial bill had was it would go to Dred, Department of Resource and Economic Development, in a fund. They would not be paid to manage it. It would not go to any studies. It would not go to any bureaucracy. That was the vital point, is not to feed any bureaucracies with this money, and not to study. Coos County is probably the most studied place on the earth, and we're not going to, and if we're going to study it, we're going to hire Coos County people to study it, because at least we get some jobs and have a cup of coffee downtown or whatever, but we're not going to focus on those things. So in terms of, my vision is projects, almost like a block grant. That would be my vision, but you know what, we didn't stipulate that. We gave it to really these people on this committee, with obviously all of the input of everybody in Coos County, and myself included, to try to say, here are some things that we've done. But what we have to do is we have to have something that we can point to, the success of this, because there is skepticism. I mean, you know, Larry and I were talking, one of the frustrations that, you know, we're going to have to deal with some of these tri-county cap issues, and they're not pretty, and they undermine people's confidence in the government to be able to do things effectively. And so we're living in that environment, so we have to perform, we have to do this right. Because if not, people say, how do you protect it? By doing it right. If you squander it, guess what? They're not going to support this. And you know, so you know, this would be a process where I think really project-based, what can help your communities, and this three-person, as presently stands, three-person board would be very involved in directing where this should be divvied up. And I don't know if I said it, maybe I didn't at the beginning, was that the projections are $10 million is that number. So that's a significant amount. I mean, the Tillotson Foundation is from what I'm told and remember, is about half of that, or is half of that. So we're looking around $10 million. Now this is based on the success. It could be 5, could be, you know, whatever. And it's going to take time to ramp up. That's going to be, I think, 2 or 3 the first year, and another mid-year and construction time. So it's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be a period to get this fully running. So,
Jeff, you know, if the North Country and folks get behind this and help our legislators move this through, because we got to get the votes of all the other legislators in the state. Is there a way to put some assurances in the bill so that the fund or the money that's being dedicated doesn't get raided like the LCHIP money did? Is there a way to, in a sense, have a lockbox for that money and put that provision in the bill?
well, when you mentioned LCHIP, I mean, I think that's probably, the governor proposed it a month ago, and I don't think it's going to be there by the end of next week. So, you know, those are the unfortunate realities. And Larry, pipe in if you have any, because you certainly have experience in this area. There's no way we can totally constitutionally protect this money. It's in the law. You know, it's in the law. They would have to change the law in another session to be able to do that. So, you know, that's always a threat for every. I don't have to Encash Ray what it feels like to be promised and then not get it back. That's a real concern. I think we have to do a good job. The one thing I will say, and I was standing behind one of my colleagues yesterday, Senator Booten from Hooksett, and to hear him talk about why he came up, he's been an opponent for years of gaming, and he came out in favor yesterday. And to hear him say, you know, it's going to fund bridges and roads, and it's going to fund this, and it's going to fund that, and it's going to fund North Country economic development. To hear my colleagues who are not from the North Country mention the North Country, you know, we're in the debate. They are for it or against it. This is the biggest issue in state government today, and the North Country is in every story because we are one of the 3 sources for the money that will flow from gaming. And the governor has assured me that she will fight for this. She will keep it. My greater fear, Yvonne, immediately is there's some friends who would like to see it help areas that are struggling. The North Country isn't the only place that's struggling. So I am going to fight to keep the words North Country, that this is not about inner city Manchester. It's not about Claremont. Our rural issues here in economic development rural areas is one that desperately needs to be focused on. The same way Pease was. It was $18 million of state money went into Pease to develop that, and now it's this great economic engine of the seacoast. So we have a similar need as they had. So let's get this issue addressed, but any legislature can do it, and you know, we can't control that. I mean, that's the unfortunate part, except always be vigilant about fighting for it. But I want to say one more thing: is it bringing the legislators around toward the North Country, and then the governor as well. I still hear from my colleagues, and I hear the governor speak to BIA, and she referenced her trip. I was talking to Commissioner Tupis the other day, and he's a great fan of Holbrook, and he's telling me that he wants to get some back office jobs that now he's doing in Berlin, and he wants to try to do something in Colebrook. Because he said, if I can get a back office job in Colebrook, they'll hold that job for 30 years. They'll hold it for 6 years. So it's better for them. And I'm so grateful. I met with the commissioners, who's a Colebrook, married a Colebrook girl, and I can't pronounce his name. Bartholomew? Barthimus, thank you. And he went on and on talking. So we do have friends who are really very helpful to us in Concord, and we need to always maximize our friends to be telling our story, to help us build that kind of support. And I certainly don't deserve credit for it. It's all kinds of people like Ray Burton and John Gals for many, many years who have built a strong foundation of appreciation for us. But we need to keep doing that, to keep the money in there. Jim.
First of all, thank you for coming up and talking to us and listening to us, and coming up with this amendment to a bill that some of us may not totally support, but if it's going to be a reality, we certainly want to be part of it. Having said that, I think it's extremely important to have a the impact is intended, that it be as flexible as possible, that it be able to leverage private dollars, local public dollars, foundation dollars, so that we can invest those funds not only in infrastructure, roads, bridges, internet, all those things that we need, buildings. We don't have buildings to show prospective businesses that are coming here. Some of the buildings we do have are in such shape that they don't want to go into them anyway. They're used to seeing a different type of structure. So I think this needs to be invested. It needs to be what they call patient capital type investments, so that the return comes down the road. And I know that we're not talking about a return, but if you can recycle some of this, that's even better. But it's got to be able to be used with private sources, because private sources are the ones that create jobs. It's not the public sector so much. So I think there's got to be a total flexibility of partnerships with private enterprise, and we've got to be able to leverage things. And I'm glad to hear you say that we aren't going to be bound by geographical boundaries of the Connecticut River, because our community extends across the river, and it's very important that that be part of our community and be able to have the flexibility to do that. That will benefit our marketplace.
All those points are very well taken, and I just want to make a plug for Dred, because so often I hear from Vito just going up to Canada, having to do almost bake sales to be able to get enough money to have a little trade show up there, or to do mileage to get up there, and this EB5, which is a discussion with our neighbors in Vermont. They've done a great job on that. This is a program that would lure foreign investment, and Harry knows all about it. $1 million, you can get a green card, but it's really transformed Stowe, and now the Northeast Kingdom, right, Harry? But New Hampshire doesn't have the money to get into it. So, it's just one more example. You do have to invest some money. You have to. You can't always be. It's like the rest areas. The Commissioner Dred would be able to go out there finding sponsors. No one's going to sponsor Colebrook's rest area or Shelburne. Maybe the one down in 93 in Manchester, but it's not going to happen in Littleton and Rumney, and we don't have the kind of volume that Coca-Cola is going to, pay for the operation of that. So, we do need to make some investments. But good point. Thank you, Jim. Would you just keep decaf?
I wanted to thank the Chamber for asking me to come up here as well, and thank you, Jeff, for coming. I think one of a key piece of our economy up here is our tourism base. And through the years, we've developed a program that has been rather effective in bringing all of the regions of Coos County together around tourism, and that's the New Hampshire Grand Program. You talk about wanting projects with some success. We've been very diligent about tracking the people that we attract to our website. Over the February vacation, we've had surveys in businesses to ask visitors, do you know about New Hampshire Grand? Why did you come visit here? Where are you from? So that we can then translate those website visits to real visits and real purchases at our businesses. We've put programs together to really help support and strengthen our tourism-related businesses. So I guess I'm just putting in a plug for tourism. It's not the answer to everything, but it is certainly one strong stool or one strong leg of that economy for the North Country. So
absolutely, it is, and certainly commend the work of NCIC and you for doing that, and that's probably why it's in the infinite wisdom they rejected the idea of elected officials being on this distribution board, because we hate saying no. but good work, and thank you for that. Julie, you were right. Other questions, concerns, any feedback on the gaming issue? I mean, it's one that I find that part of the population of the country says, why why aren't we getting one? And certainly there's been lots of discussion and lots of people who think I'm making a mistake by supporting this because they want a casino in the North Country. And, but that is not in the cards, and that's just the political reality of things. And I know there's others who just don't like the idea at all. So any might add to that? I know. No. Yes?
I know the thing about having the one casino down south, but will this ever open up an opportunity for businesses around here to put little coin-operated type gambling things or smaller games, et cetera? Will that be encompassed in that bill also in the future, or?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a compromise. I mean, it's just classic of trying to bring in as many partners who have objections and settle their objections. And you know, one casino, highly regulated, high-end, you know, if done right, the feeling is, and the bill does stipulate there'll be a study for others. You know, so you know, it's a gradual process because there's a lot of concern that, you know, expanding too quickly. They want it to be very slow, very systematic, and having time to sort of measure it. And even if they fail, say they come in and, you know, say, no, this is not a viable source, they put their $80 million, they fund our budget, they help us in the North Country, they help the entire state, and they don't make it. You know, we still got the $80 million. I mean, to me, it's the way New Hampshire usually does things. I mean, we're always looking for somebody else to pay our way. This fits right into the approach of doing it. But we're concerned about, you know, I think a lot of us are concerned about the quality of life, and is this the direction? You know I didn't like the prisons in Berlin. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was what, I mean, I grew up here. I lived in the Concord area for 20 years, so I just moved back here with great illusions, grand illusions that all kind of biodegradable, and you know, it's a hard-pressed area. And I see in Berlin, and I wrote for the Berlin Reporter, is that the prisons have worked. They have been good for that community. And I would hate to see Berlin today, with this economic situation, if we didn't have those prisons there. So I think it's been good, and I was wrong. So, you know, I think it's that point of looking at it saying, can we possibly find a way to manage these in a way that we can extract the most benefits and the least amount of problems? And I think we can. Yes, Harry.
You mentioned that the money could be utilized across state lines. So, and I just want you to kind of spell that out a little better for me.
Well, I'm not sure that it does. Larry might have to fix that. Because, I mean, what we described, it's to benefit the North Country. We tried to use very vague terms. And, you know, if I've learned anything in the 68 days I've been down there, it's better to stay vague. It's better not to get hemmed in. So, because the world changes very quickly. And I'm not a lawyer, so I can't describe it. To benefit the upper 1/3 of New Hampshire, to me, would you be able to partner with Vermont on some kind of a project at Gilman? I think so, but I'm not enough. I mean, to me, that fits. Does it benefit the upper 1/3? And does it do the three things which we talked about economic development is? And I think it does, but someone else could say, of course it doesn't. But, you know, my view is that it does.
My interest was that, or my thought process was that it certainly would, but New Hampshire dollars being spent in Vermont, that would be kind of unique.
Yeah, it may not be possible. I don't know, but that's why I said, you know what, we're not hemmed in by saying you can't use it in Vermont. And can you add something? You know more about this than I do.
Well, I mean, I don't know if the money's going to be spent, should be spent in Vermont, but certainly, you know, if you're gonna, if Mr. Tillotson gets a bit of help to refurbish his building in the industrial park, it's gonna benefit Vermont folks who are gonna be working in the area in New Hampshire.
And just as an example of that, when Ethan Allen first went down, that's actually in Vermont.
Right.
But both New Hampshire and Vermont community development block grant programs provide provided funding for that because we could show that over 50%, or I can't remember the exact number, but employees there were New Hampshire residents. So it has happened
Yeah,
with
that's
other
good, thank you.
programs.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, you know, those of, being more flexible is always better in my view, and as long as we're meeting the goals that people have. And, you know, this is a political process, and that's it, you know, if there's adamantly opposed to that idea, that notion, then you know what, I think there would be some people would say, no, we can't do that. And you know, then that's okay too, but, you know, not starting from a point of being all unable to be flexible. So, Jim, did you?
Go ahead, Albert.
Good morning, Senator. I know you said that in this process things have been vague. Regarding the three-person distribution team, I'd like to say I'm supportive of maybe not being so vague with the location or the geographic location and where those folks come from. I want to make sure that there's going to be a representative of the North Country on that team. Is that something you folks have talked about?
All three are going to
All
come to
three.
North Country. All three.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In the North Country, again, is the top third of the state.
Upper 1/3 of the state.
Excellent, thank you.
And my district is 27%, so it's a little hangover over on the edges there, so.
I just want to go back to what you said about Quebec and Canada. Our economy here in Colebrook is based on, you know, 3 investments made by Canadian companies already, and I know Littleton has Canadian investments, so I think somehow this money has to be used for recruitment. That's where our jobs are going to be moving into the area. While we don't create ourselves through investment of these funds, need to go to Dred so that they can cross that border and go up and talk to companies. There are companies interested. And maybe even the point of, at some point, having an office in Montreal that will, you know, represent New Hampshire. You know, our neighbors are very active up there, and our people have to struggle to get the money, as you indicated, to go up there. And that's our best opportunity for bringing jobs to the North Country. And we've proven it over and over again that we just need that. It's a little support that's needed now, you know, even before this fund becomes available. So.
Yeah. Well, and you look at Massachusetts and how easy it is to convince them to benefit, no income tax, no sales tax, and then you look at, and you put those benefits on steroids when you go to Quebec. But, see another hand, I thought maybe I did.
Jeff, let me just make a statement coming from Connecticut.
Please.
The state of Connecticut probably went through this about 25 years ago when the Mashantucket Pequot Indians stepped up and built their casino. And I think they started with bingo, and it's a huge complex now. Then the Mohegans stepped up and built the Mohegan Sun, which is another incredible complex. But I think it's important, if you haven't visited a casino, you can spend an entire day there and not gamble. I mean, they have restaurants, the Sun has a WNBA team, basketball team, they have golf courses, they have museums, shopping that you wouldn't believe. So it's a fun day to go to the end. I actually held conferences there for my staff. They've got facilities that are second to none. So I think if you're concerned about supporting a gambling casino, look at it also as a place where you can go and have fun without even gambling, and so that's why I would fully support this casino going forward. I don't know, I haven't seen any details on what they're going to build down there, but if they do go, not to the extreme that maybe the Indians went to, but if they do put in other facilities such as restaurants and museums and stuff like that, it would be a spectacular place to go.
I mean, it's a $450 million construction project, so I mean, pretty substantial.
Have you heard any concern from constituents regarding drawing the tourism base towards the southern part of the state from the North Country?
No, I haven't, and I haven't. So thanks for bringing it. I have not heard that and have not thought about that. What I mostly hear about is Oxford. I mean, really, Oxford's issues are more prevalent to us than whatever would happen in Salem.
a lot of
tickets.
our tourism does come from Massachusetts.
Yeah,
so.
you know, I don't know, I haven't, do you mean people from the north going south, or people, they would stop there versus keep
Stay
going?
in the south as opposed to
Yeah,
driving to
I
the
just
north.
think we have so much, it's a different experience to offer than Salem, New Hampshire. You know, nothing against Salem, New Hampshire, but some was saying, you know, would you rather spend a weekend in Suffolk Downs or Salem, New Hampshire? I said, neither. You know, I mean, versus what we have in the North Country, you know, you know, it's hard, who knows what the ultimate, you know, effects of movement of people and whatnot. But certainly what's interesting is that we're seeing an enormous reduction in lottery ticket sales in the North Country, especially around, you know, Conway, over that area, because they're going to gamble at Oxford, so they're not buying. And so, you know, that's a loss. So we're seeing a loss in our budget that needs to be, we need to fill a hole there. And Massachusetts coming forward and us competing with an area that, you know, who can get to it first, who can, you know, all that economic piece. So, you know, those are all those considerations that I have to get into, but there's so many considerations that are not